Everyone ready now? Okay. Good evening. I wanted to call tonight's meeting to order. Welcome to the Monday, March 9th meeting of the City Council. Madam Clerk, can we start with roll, please?
Mr. Agan?
Here.
Ms. Connolly? Here. Ms. Downs?
Here.
Ms. Flynn?
Here.
Mr. Snyder?
Here.
Ms. Underhill?
Here.
And Mayor Hardy?
Here.
Thank you.
Everyone rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
To the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion to adopt tonight's meeting agenda?
I move to adopt the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting agenda is adopted. Let's start off with a proclamation tonight. Mr. Agan will help us declare March 26, 2026 as Equal Pay Day in the City of Falls Church.
Whereas Equal Pay Day 2026 marks the current state of the intersectional gender pay gap for women, and each year this symbolic day is used to raise awareness around and combat the impact of pay inequities by highlighting how far into a new year a woman must work on average to earn what a man did in the previous year. And whereas in 2026, April 9th, is Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Women's Equal Pay Day. August 6th is Mom's Equal Pay Day. June 17th is LGBTQIA+ Equal Pay Awareness Day. July 21st is Black Women's Equal Pay Day. September 15th is Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander Women's Equal Pay Day. October 8th is Latina Equal Pay Day. October 20th is Disabled Women's Equal Pay Day. And November 19th is Native Women's Equal Pay Day. And whereas the gender pay gap reflects the discriminatory barriers women face in accessing good-paying jobs while meeting caregiving responsibilities, including a lack of affordable child care, elder care, and paid family and medical leave, which can prevent women from joining and staying in the workforce. And whereas more than 6 decades after the passage of the Equal Pay Act of 1963, census data show that women overall pay just 75 cents for each dollar paid to men. Asian American women are paid 94 cents. White non-Hispanic women are paid 80 cents. Black women are paid 66 cents. Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander women are paid 65 cents. Latinas are paid 58 cents. And American Indian and Alaska Native women are paid 58 cents for every dollar paid to white non-Hispanic men. And whereas over a career woman's total estimated earnings loss due to the gender pay gap is nearly $462,000, and Black and Latino women experience even greater earnings losses, around $885,000 and $1.2 million respectively. And whereas addressing the barriers that hold women back from full participation and fair treatment in the workforce promotes gender equality, strengthens the security of families, and eases future retirement costs while enhancing the overall economy. And whereas Thursday, March 26, 2026, symbolizes the time this year in which the wages paid to American women catch up to the wages paid to men from the previous year.
Now therefore I, Letty Hardy, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, do hereby proclaim March 26, 2026 as Equal Pay Day in the City of Falls Church and urge the community to recognize the full value of women's skills and their significant contributions to the labor force, acknowledge the injustice of wage inequality, and join efforts to achieve equal pay. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to help receive the proclamation? Okay. Well, the 5 women up here will help receive it on everyone's behalf, so thank you, Mr. Agan. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone in the audience do a new Border Commission oath of office?
Yes, we have John Ferris here to take his oath for the Environmental Sustainability Council.
Welcome, and thank you, Mr. Ferris.
So if you raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you as a member of the Environmental Sustainability Council according to the best of your ability, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's move on to receipt of public comments. Can we start with a summary of the written comments?
One moment, please.
I think we just had one, right?
Believe so, yes. Sorry about that.
It looks like we have another one that just came over email, so.
Change.org forwarded a link to a petition initiated by Meg Byer requesting budgeting for the renovation of the teen room at the community center in FY27. And then you were just sent over a comment that was received. Dave Gustafson wrote to encourage adoption of the shared mobility devices pilot program and to encourage that any future device corral locations not be on the city's narrow sidewalks.
Okay. And how about public comments live or in person tonight, or virtually tonight?
We did not receive anybody request to speak remotely, and I haven't seen any speaker slips come in, so.
Okay. I know we have a couple items up for public hearing, so we will welcome public comments when those items are called as well. Moving on quickly through the agenda tonight. Let's move on to the report of the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor Hardy, members of council. Just wanted to note two things in the manager's report tonight. One is that property owners in the city should be receiving soon, if they have not already received, notices of reassessment from the city's Office of Real Estate Assessment. The city put out a press release last week that provided some of the details about the reassessment this year. Overall, the city's tax base has grown to just over $6.8 billion, which is a 6.9% increase over last year. Market growth is 5.3% growth across all of our real estate sectors, commercial and residential. And new construction, again, this year is a significant amount of the growth this year, and that accounts for 1.6% of the growth in assessed value. So I just wanted to call that out and encourage people to look in their mail and look for their assessments. And if they do have any questions about that, they can contact the city's Office of Real Estate Assessment, and the contact information is on the assessment notice. The City Council will be joined at your next meeting 2 weeks from now on March 23rd to receive the city manager's budget recommendations for the coming year and the school board's budget request. And so we'll kick off budget season 2 weeks from tonight. We'll also be inviting the public into two town hall meetings on the budget. And the first is the Thursday after budget presentation. So that would be on Thursday, March 26th at noon. And then we'll have a whole series of work sessions and public hearings. And then there'll be a second town hall meeting on April 30th at also a Thursday night, April 30th at 7 p.m. So we encourage the public to participate in that process as the City Council weighs what I think will be some challenging budget decisions for the coming year. The second thing I want to note, the public has seen the rollout of our new yellow compost carts, and so those were all delivered the last week, and the final deliveries finished up on Friday. So appreciate the public's feedback on that. If you do have any questions about the program, you can contact the city through the city website. Lonnie Marchetti is their solid waste programs coordinator. She's done a great job in responding to any questions, or if people want any change to their bin, she can carry those out. One of the questions that we have gotten about the bin has been the question of, is the new fee related to the new compost bin? And the answer is no. The solid waste fee is really driven by what you're throwing in your gray bin that you've traditionally had. That's really what drives the city's costs. And the compost program is really intended to ultimately to lower those costs by diverting waste away from the waste to energy incinerator that's operated by Fairfax County, where we pay high tipping fees and instead divert that to be reused and turned into soil enhancements and compostable materials. And so that's the intent of that program. And those are the two things I wanted to report on tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Ms. Connolly?
Thank you for that, Mr. Shields. They were, it was just, there they were.
That's right.
After all that talking, there they were. One of the things that I saw in the communications that came with it, and I appreciate all of those different pieces, is that once a month we'll still collect yard waste bags. Do we know what day which week? Is it a certain week of the month? Do you know how that's going to work?
Let me check with Andy if you know the answer to that
No.
question. Okay. We'll need
That
to
would be helpful just to put out in some
sort of
communication.
clarification
like,
on that.
On the fourth Wednesday or the second Wednesday or every other Wednesday or something,
Okay.
whatever that is.
That's right.
So that people aren't lugging their bags back and forth if they feel the need to. But other than that, thank you.
Anything else on the side? Council requests or questions? Mr. Snyder?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Mr. City Manager, I know that I've received 2 questions from constituents on the new bins. First of all, some didn't like the color. I assume that can't be changed. Is that right?
That is-
Without
that's
huge
right.
expense. Is that right?
That's right.
And I do think yellow has been a color that we've talked a lot about and numerous hearings, et cetera. The other question came from mixing organic waste with yard waste. And I wondered if you could comment on that. There's some concern about rodents, et cetera.
Well, thank you for the question. And when we were exploring this compost cart, we formed a committee, and one of the things that the committee did was have a field trip with Arlington County to see how Arlington County does it. Arlington County does mix its yard waste with its compost materials from the kitchen, and so we kind of saw how that played out in Arlington County, and I think we were satisfied that it would be done without problems with rodents or odors and things like that based on the experience that our neighbors have had. There are best practices and tips that I think are in the materials that we're putting out in the communications about how homeowners can use those carts to to sort of avoid what we called back when we were looking at it, the potential ick factor of having those waste streams mixed. And but I think there are ways to sort of basically use the bins in ways that won't cause those types of problems. I don't know if Andy, if you had any other sort of comments just from the work that the team has been doing on this in terms of advice for the public on that? Or hopefully our microphones are working.
No, I think overall the bins deployments have gone really well. The materials the teams distributed both with the bins as well as online, the life cycle of a lemon video, for example, I think those will give the public some good information on how best to use the organics carts. The question earlier about yard waste bags, I'm not aware of a schedule where we're only picking those up once a month, so we'll follow up with staff, but if that's the case, that's new.
Okay. I was just going to add that I actually peeked in some of Arlington's compost bins, as well as when I was on the West Coast, it actually had similar size, and they were all fine with kind of yard waste and kitchen waste mixed together. So, and of 2 instead of just 1.
You looked in the bins?
That's trash day, so I opened and just
That's
peered.
dedication, Mayor.
Okay, Ms. Underhill?
So just a couple of comments. Yeah, it's unfortunate because I'm so excited about this rollout. I was so excited to see the bins, and this is just such a great step forward, I think, for the city. But then, a tiny detail like the color of the bins can suddenly have all these adverse reactions and add visual clutter or whatever else to the city. So I am hoping that maybe down the line, as we issue more bins, if we have the option to change the color later on, we can do so that it's not so jarring. But as I've been talking to other council members, maybe over time they'll get dirty and more muted. So
Plastics do fade in the sun.
things do fade. So maybe it won't be so jarring. On the positive, it does stand out from the other two bins, so it's easy to tell. But I think the other way to make something stand out is just to have the label compost on top, so people know which one says compost, recycling, and trash. Separately, I did get from members of CACT, they were asking if there could be some additional communications sent out from, in the focus or something about the laws that had changed regarding the side crosswalks and how police treat people crossing the streets. And so what the rules are with drivers going through crosswalks now. I don't know if any communications had gone out about that since that change has happened, but if there could be some mention in the focus or other citywide communications about how to treat people in crosswalks, that would be deeply appreciated. And that's all.
Okay, this side. Vice Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shields, Mr. Young. I was interested. I read the report that Ms. Marchetti sent out about just updating the council. And I thought it was interesting that she said they received a number of comments from people that they were unaware this was happening. And which I found surprising, because I feel that Mary Catherine Chase and her team and Andy Young and his team, I don't know what else we could have done. We had yard signs out, we had door hangers out, flyers, and so I am curious, just maybe something that in the future when we get those kind of calls, we can ask people, where do you get your information about city business? Because I don't know what else we could do. I feel like that one is really something that we worked hard on to get the word out. So just food for thought, but it would be interesting, short of doing a survey of people, but just say, hey, I'm curious, where would you have picked up on this information? So that's just something, because I don't know what else we could have done. I think the team did a really good job trying to get the word out. And then we did have that written public comment tonight about the teen room in the community center needing a renovation. I believe there's a petition, and I believe someone's coming in a week or two to give a verbal public comment. But I was wondering if we can just put that on our list, look into it. Maybe Mr. Schlitt can brief Parks and Rec about it or what have you. But just obviously we know what the budget. We already know what the budget is like for this upcoming fiscal year. So, but is it something we would want to add to the CIP down the road or something like that? So, thank you.
Yeah, on that point, I actually encouraged the petitioners to go to the Rec and Parks Board meeting, which I think incidentally is this Wednesday. So at least the board can discuss it and staff has a chance to decide about the scope of the project. So before coming to council, we figured we'd probably look for advice from that board anyway. So I think they should be doing that. Ms. Flynn?
I just had two quick things. Like you, Mayor, I also suggested that they go to the Rec and Parks Advisory Board just to put the concern, on their radar and help prioritize relative to other, things that the Rec and Parks Department might be looking to in its budget, or just so that they're aware of kind of that request in the community. And then back to the compost bins, my only request was that kind of seeing the different conversations on some of the different, groups or neighborhood listservs, people do have kind of workarounds, like when neighbors say, hey, I'm concerned that this is going to get icky, or I'm concerned I'm going to attract like rodents or raccoons or whatever else, or I'm keeping compost crew because I don't, want to attract like vermin to my house, there are other people responding, saying, oh, well, I actually like keep the compost crew bucket and I'm keeping it sealed in that for the week. And then I'm going to transfer it to my bin, on the day of pickup, just so that it can be included in what I'm already paying for as a fee for service. And so maybe, drawing from Arlington best practices or drawing from some of those kind of community best practices tips, so to speak, the communications office could do another round of just, hey, you've now gotten your bins, here's ways that you might be able to, use them, even though you could have a initially adverse reaction, but, so wanted to put that out there as kind of just a follow-up request, given the good work, the communications team has been doing across issues.
Mr. Hagan?
I'm going to jump onto the yellow bins also and say I was getting worried last week because apparently I live in, I guess, the last section to get delivered. So I was getting a little worried, but all was good. I do have a question on the ick factor and something that's in there. There are compostable bags, the BPI certified bags, and the materials do refer to saying that those are the quote liners are allowed in the bins, while plastic bags are not, but they kind of get marketed as compostable bags, and they look like plastic, but they're made of like corn and they're compostable.
I think we might want to get some clarity on that because I personally am using them right now in my kitchen to collect all the stuff, and I don't know whether I can just toss the bag in the bin or I have to dump it out into the bin. And so I think we might want to get some clarity on that because you put them in a nice compostable bag, no ick factor. And I think the yellow will fade. You'll get used to it, Justine.
Okay. Is that it for council requests? Okay. Well, I'm not going to pile on the yellow ones. I think all the comments I've heard have been similar. So thank you to staff for that. And it's appreciate all the hard work leading up to this point and the final rollout. And I think when they is pickup this week? Yes. I actually saw some yellow cars actually get used by people with yard waste. So that is nice to see. So thank you. Let's move on to business on the agenda. Can you call the first item, please?
Yes, and before I read, I just want to acknowledge we are having a bit of a sound issue in the room, so that's what you're hearing. We're trying to troubleshoot it, but something came up just before the meeting, so apologies for the disturbance there. We're working on it. So this is an item for public hearing. TR 24-28 is a resolution to amend the City of Falls Church Comprehensive Plan to update Chapter 8, Community Building Blocks, Community Facilities, Infrastructure, Utilities, and Public Services. And for staff, if you'd like to use the handheld mic, you can, or we can put a mic here on the podium, this mic, if it works better for you. So it's up to you.
And as Ms. LaRive is moving to the
Other microphone. I do want to just note that this item is before the council with a request for final public hearing and final consideration.
This was a big and broad team effort to develop this chapter of the comprehensive plan, and Zoe LaRive has been our team leader and has done a great job. So Zoe, thank you for your work, and we'll turn it over to you for the staff presentation.
Thank you, and I want to share the thought that this was a large team effort, and I want to thank everyone, especially the Department of Public Works, which we coordinated with a lot in this project. So tonight, the council is requested to approve the amendment to the comprehensive plan titled Chapter 8, Community Building Blocks, Community Facilities, Infrastructure, Utilities, and Public Services. The comprehensive plan is a policy document that guides physical development and investment in the city, and it's a long-range plan looking 20 to 25 years out into the future. The Chapter 8 that is being updated was the existing version of that chapter was last updated in 2005. The update to the chapter is based on the most recent demographic projections as well as industry specific best practices, and the state of the existing infrastructure. The chapter is divided into 4 topic areas: government services and facilities, public safety, city utility services, and third-party utility services. You can see in the staff report, we have addressed the comments from the previous City Council work session, which was on February 2nd, as well as the comments from the Planning Commission recommendation meeting, which was, I believe, February 18th. And the third comment matrix is addressing comments from Arlington County in their letter of support they've submitted. So to finish up, we are recommending tonight that City Council adopts this new chapter update, and we thank you for your time.
Questions or comments from council before I open it up for any comments from the public? Mr. Snyder?
I had one question on the Gordon Road triangle discussion. Is it clear enough that the ULI TAP is just a plan and that we're not committing necessarily to adopting that? Because that plan does not provide for other uses at Gordon Road Triangle, potentially recreational or housing or other issues. So I'm trying to think what page that's on.
I believe the text, we included that it is a recommendation of ULI TAP, which is just which is not a city-run plan. That is not a city adopted policy. That is a study in a sense. I'm looking again at the language, and I believe that it sufficiently talks about it as a recommendation, but we are open to adding more clarifying language if you believe we should.
Yeah, I actually had that same exact question written down in my notes. I don't think, Mr. Shields, it's not, when I think of the ULI TAP, I think of this sort of big picture kind of thing that wanted, with a combination of Fairfax land, Falls Church City land, private owner land, So, and then the way that it's worded in this, it makes it seem like it's just expanding the property yard, and it talks about it being included, paid for through the CIP, but the other time when we talked about it, my understanding was if we went with this big version, we would have to, assume some debt and that kind of thing. So I just didn't know. To me, it didn't seem completely clear how it's described in there. Because I felt like the ULI TAP, their recommendation was to kind of blow, excuse me, but really develop it into one big piece, whereas what we're talking about in here is more focused on the property yard. So we can, I don't know, we could just, that's that one section I thought. I agreed with Mr. Schneider. I thought it could be clarified a little better.
And, the focus here, because this isn't really a land use chapter or a vision for the West End, it's a facilities chapter of the comp plan. So that's why the focus is on what the city owns, the city's facilities there. I don't know if there are any suggested edits to it
But maybe just adding a line that said something like, this report recommended a variety of ways to develop it, one being expansion of the property or something, I don't know, because it just, like I said, when that report came out, it was much more comprehensive than what is here. I think I've been on the record saying that, to me, the most important thing is that we fix our DPW facility above anything else. But I guess it says that. It says a key recommendation of the, yeah, I guess it says that enough. I just, I don't know. And I was trying, I know that we had, the financing piece and all that, but, if we're just looking at it as just focusing on the DPW part of that ULI TAP report. I guess that's okay to do it that way.
Madam Mayor, I'm just suggesting a slight edit. It was going to be on page 24. Something like one study, ULI TAP reimagining, so that it doesn't imply that we're accepting that as the necessarily the way we're going to go in the future.
Other people have suggestions or input on that? Or fine with that edit?
I'm fine with it. It's just I think what's throwing me off is the fact that there's a list here of studies that considered it, how it could evolve, and so forth. That there's 5 studies, but only one of them was kind of flushed out. I think it's the fact that only one of them got flushed out that is throwing things off. But I'm fine with clarifying that to make it clear this is one of the studies.
Other thoughts? I think we're fine with it. I expect that given when we do take on Gordon Road more thoroughly, we will have plenty of discussion when that time comes as well. Okay. Other thoughts or comments? I had one that shouldn't be on critical path for adoption tonight, but I was reviewing kind of the engagement schedule that we've taken since, 2 years ago, March 2024. So I know that we spent a fair amount of time in the chapter talking about schools, and so I think it would actually make sense to visit the school board with this, either after we adopt tonight, or just make sure they send it to them, because I know it calls out their facilities assessment that they're planning to do, which I think we had approved the $200,000 for them to spend taking on. I think the chapter even calls it out. So I would recommend that the school board at least get a copy, if not a full briefing about their responsibility as called out in the plan.
We were able to share the plan with the school board, I believe, digitally in January. We were in discussions to either do a physical presentation to them or share the plan earlier, but there was an error in the previous draft of the plan that said that the schools were included in the city's facility conditions assessment. And so in conversation with the schools staff, they recommended that we, instead of taking it to the school board at that point and just verbally and in a written way saying there's an error in this draft, we will be fixing it in the next version, because they were moving forward with that FCA recommendation, they asked if we could instead wait until the next version of the draft was was published, and in that timeline we weren't able to make it to visit them, but we would be happy to go and give them a further briefing. Yes, we've been in conversation with how long this project's gone on. The school staff has had some overturns. We've had a lot of different meetings and conversations over the last 2 years and are happy to continue that partnership.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to open it up for public comments. Any members of the audience wish to comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. If there's no further discussion, I will take a motion.
I'll move to adopt TR 24-28.
Is there a second?
Second?
Ms. Downs on the second. Can you call roll, please?
Mr. Agan?
Yes.
Ms. Connolly?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
And Mayor Hardy.
Yes.
The motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Council.
Congratulations, and thank you for the long work on this.
Thank you.
And call the next item.
This item is also for public hearing. TO 25-22 is an ordinance to amend the Code of the City of Falls Church, Chapter 48 Zoning, Section 48-2 Definitions, Section 48-3 General Regulations, Section 48-1101 General Requirements, Section 48-1106 Tree Canopy Requirements, in non-residential zoning districts, and Section 48-1135 preliminary survey documents to increase minimum standards for tree canopy coverage within non-residential zoning districts program.
So we're joined by Mr. Charles Prince, the city arborist, and I want to thank him for his good work on this ordinance, supported by our planning staff and supported by the Urban Forestry Commission. And we have our chair in the audience here with us tonight as well. But we'll turn it over to Mr. Prince for the presentation. This is before council also for final public hearing and final consideration. Mr. Prince.
Thank you, Wyatt. Thank you, Mayor Hardy, members of council. I'm going to keep my presentation short. There's been very few changes since last time I stood in front of you to speak. From feedback from council, if you look at the lines 241 to 244, just explains a little bit about what the money is and what it's for and how I kind of calculated it. And also in the ordinance itself, line 548 under hardships, just some minor cleanups of the language in that, just to make it a little bit more concise. Other than that, that's all the changes, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. Thank you for your work on this. Questions or comments for Mr. Prince? Vice Mayor?
Thank you so much, Mr. Prince. I had one quick question in looking, let me find it. Looking at the staff report, and I know this is something I think Mr. Egan brought up about the, if there's a hardship, and I'm sorry, I'm on the staff report, I'm at line 241 through 244. This is the gray part that was added, I believe, after our discussion the last time. I just had a question. Is this per state code, or is this a city code, or is this just something that, just how we are operating? It's, in terms of so the section I'm talking about is, in such instance, there's an option to pay into the tree canopy fund at $2,000 per 250 square feet. Is that something that's...
So the state code, I'll take that if you don't mind. This is, this provision that is state code driven. The state code does require that we offer an opportunity in case of hardship for a cash in lieu payment.
Okay.
And so I see that it says there's kind of an option, but it's the option only exists in cases of hardship as determined by the city. And if that hardship exists, then there really isn't an option. There's a requirement that that money be paid into the fund.
So, and that's what I thought I remembered us talking about. I didn't know, to be more transparent and to clarify, would it be good to add something in there that says per state code? So I know that's not exactly what the state, I'm just wondering if that, to show that we're following what this code is.
If you don't mind, I'd like to just, before I answer that, visit the section of the ordinance that...
Okay. It's not a huge thing. I just thought,
cash in lieu.
If people think, oh, this is the city trying to, but this is really something us trying to follow what the state is telling us that we need to be doing.
We could, as part of the motion for this item, move to add that language to the staff report.
Okay.
That, in the lines that you mentioned.
I mean, I don't know. Again, it's not a huge thing. I just thought that might clarify why we do that.
On line 569 of the ordinance, it does kind of describe all of that information. I believe it should cover everything that you're looking for, and that's what will actually be in the city code. And if it isn't, I'm happy to add it.
I think if you look at line 38 through 42, it says state code requires I'm kind of reading this live, so if it doesn't say what I think it's going to say, I'm sorry. But state code requires that any local tree ordinance must allow challenging sites facing specific criteria to be eligible for satisfying the tree canopy requirement through payment of a fee to a locally administered tree canopy fund.
No, that's fine. I
So,
must have
yeah.
just totally missed that. No, that's
Well,
right.
yeah,
That's right.
it's long. There's a lot in there. Thank
Okay.
you.
No, that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Others? Mr. Egan?
Just one quick timing question. I know there's a site plan that's been submitted for T1 zone at 258 North Washington. Would that site plan be subject to the current regulations or to these rules?
I believe they're going, when they were submitted, that's what code they'll be held to.
Okay, so they'd be held to the current code.
Yeah,
I'm
we
not
can-
sure it makes any difference,
Yeah, I
but
don't
think
believe we
they're
can change it in the middle of process.
I think their current site plan, like their documents that they submitted, have in their, like, tables, which regulations they're subject to, and have the city requirements at 15%, and their representation is that the
Yeah.
lot meets a 15% tree canopy requirement, so it's actually a better tree canopy currently than.
yeah, it's not bad.
It is a good question. Ordinances, by default, are effective 10 days after they're voted on by council. That's pursuant to our city code. And so anything that's acted on, voted on, like for site plan approval, or I guess not voted on, acted on after that date, would have to meet all the existing ordinance requirements.
Yeah, I don't think they're a problem, but I was just curious.
But isn't this also just for the T-zones that are non-residential uses, and the site plan is residential proposed?
Oh, yeah, I wasn't aware. This only applies to commercial uses in the T-zones.
Okay. Ms. Flynn, did you have something, Jim?
Oh, no, I just wanted to say thank you again to staff and to everyone else who was involved in moving this along. I think the Urban Forestry Commission commented at its last meeting that it's been authority we've had for decades, and so it's nice to finally see that we're imposing the minimum in business districts, and that we'll continue to hopefully seek further, legislative authority to do even more to promote and preserve tree canopy in the city. So thanks again.
Okay. I'll echo that, because I think when I was your liaison 3+ years ago, it was discussed. I'm glad to see it get to the finish line, so thank you for the work on it. I'll take a motion.
I'll move to adopt TO 25-22.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Snyder on the second. Can you call roll, please?
Mr. Egan?
Yes.
Ms. Connolly?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
And Mayor Hardy?
Yes.
The motion carries 7-0. Thank you, council.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next item. We're on to a couple resolutions. Call the first one.
TR 26-07 is a resolution to authorize the City of Falls Church Shared Mobility Devices Pilot Program.
Mr. Kurt Lawrence is going to give the staff report on this, and the council's discussed this a few times at work session, and this resolution is before council for formal action tonight. And so, Mr. Lawrence, we'll turn it over to you for the staff report.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shields, for the introduction. As he said, it's been to work session 2 times now, and the most recent time on Monday, March 2nd. We sort of worked through some of the questions that we've received during this planning process. Since that work session on Monday, there's been no substantial changes. Just a quick few words of clarification in the MOU that we will be making sure that the city is able to set no ride zones, no park zones, and slow ride zones per our discussion on Monday night. And then as part of follow-up to that discussion as well with regard to the schools and considering different options for folks being able to ride there, staff will be meeting with school staff in the coming weeks to work on a plan of action before streeters come to the streets and the program is fully underway. With that said, I think that's really it. There's no changes since last time other than that, and I'm happy to answer questions. I actually will point out that previously the MOA and the program document have been attachments to the staff report. They're now sort of directly attached to the resolution just so everything's together. So
Great.
just a procedural thing.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. I know we had a very thorough discussion in last week's work session, so we'll see if there's additional ones this week.
Great, thanks.
Questions or comments on this? Ms. Flynn?
I just had one quick one, and it's because of, I think, continued resident concern around scooters on the sidewalk. And I guess, wanted to confirm, since we're doing this by resolution and because it is a pilot program, to the extent that if this were rolled out and we wanted to make changes just based on sort of interactions in the community between the scooters and e-bikes or whatever else it is, that we would actually be able to move pretty quickly and more quickly than you would be able to amend an ordinance, for example, to respond to concerns we see arising that we would want to actually, be responsive to during the pilot program.
Yes, so there's a range of options that we can do in terms of making changes, kind of depending how big the change is. That'll be how big our process is. But I'm expecting the city to work very closely with our operator partners, and any sort of day-to-day minor changes can just happen at that kind of administrative level. So I'm confident that we can be pretty agile during this process.
Thank you.
Others? Mr. Snyder?
Thanks very much. Could you summarize the communications that will accompany this pilot, communications to the users of the devices, but also communications to the public?
Sure. So communications to the users, I'll start with that. As people sign up for whichever operator we end up getting in the city, they'll have an app that they have to sign up for, which will include kind of an age verification check, terms and conditions to agree to, and just sort of introductory information for riding scooters. As they go on each individual ride, we can remind them of certain information. For example, our sidewalk practices. We want people to go to lower speeds, 6 miles an hour on the sidewalks when compared to the street, which would be faster. And then in terms to the general public, we want to do a really broad outreach, sort of inspired by what we talked about earlier with the yellow carts, how with that we looked at several different options to kind of reach as many people as possible. So newsletter, social media, website, press release, and just starting that pretty soon after council adoption so that we can get the message moving clearly and get it out before any scooters come to the streets.
So here's a question. If someone sees a scooter rider violating good practices, for example, going, not treating pedestrians well on sidewalks, for example, or other behavior, how would that be enforced?
So that would be similar to, for example, if a bike rider was sort of breaking rules and being, not courteous on our roads, they could send a complaint to the city, and then we could work with the operator to maybe try to figure out if we know who that person is, if maybe that's a repeated offender. And then otherwise, they could contact the police non-emergency number. So I think there's a range of ways for them to kind of make that complaint, and then we can act on it from there.
Is that clear to the public as to how to make that complaint?
We can include that in our materials as we kind of advertise the program prior to the scooters being rolled out.
Yeah. I want to add this additional capability, but safety is number one for me. Safety of the users and safety of other people that are users of our infrastructure. And taxing, do we tax the the operators for the ability to make a profit with that, with these devices?
So we do tax the operators. The last I'd heard on that was that in a conversation with an operator prior to the previous work session, they said they do pay taxes in Arlington County. They had just done the taxes, and they believed it was the business tangible personal property tax, which I believe will be the tax assessed on these companies. But they do pay taxes, and the case will be the same here.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Hagan?
Just one quick thing. When we go to do the communication, I think it would be important to also point out that not all of the scooters and e-bikes on the street are through this program. I'm sure everybody was out there this weekend. There are already private scooters. People have them, and I don't think we've really had a problem with them, but this is in addition to those. So I think that's important to communicate.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
So I know that April was planned when we'd open up for applications for operators.
Yes, to send a request for applications to operators, yes.
So assuming we approve this, we open up for applications, how quickly would we actually have scooters available in the city?
So it kind of depends on how that process goes with the operators, but we're anticipating May or June as the launch date, with July as the absolute latest.
Okay. And we think, unlike 2019, we will get some takers this time?
During the conversations I've had with operators, it's been positive. So I won't make any promises, won't jinx anything, but I'm confident that our program's designed to be friendly to the operator industry.
Okay. Well, I know this one doesn't require a public hearing, but I guess I will still open up for any members of the public to comment. Anyone want to comment about scooters or shared mobility devices? Okay, I'm going to close public hearing. Will someone offer a motion? I will.
I move to, if I can find the number. I move to adopt TR 26-07.
Is there a second? Second. Ms. Connolly in the second. You can call roll, please.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Ms. Connolly?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
Mayor Hardy?
Yes.
The motion carries 7-0. Thank you. And before we move on to the next item, I don't think we actually opened the tree canopy item to public hearing. So I think we may need to revisit that one and follow up on that.
Thank you for catching that.
Thank you.
I don't know if we need Mr. Prince to come back up, but we can go back to TO 25-22. Any members of the public wish to comment on TO 25-22? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Do we need to do a new vote?
I think the best practice would be to rescind the vote that was taken, open the public hearing, close the public hearing, and then take a new vote.
Okay. People have to, the person who made the motion, rescind their vote? Rescind the motion?
It's anyone can make the motion to rescind the vote that was taken on that item.
I move to rescind the vote.
No, it has to be done by roll call. Thank you.
I move to rescind the vote that was taken on TO 25-22.
Is there a second?
Second.
And this has to be done by roll call? Okay, so this is to rescind the previous tree canopy vote.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Ms. Connolly?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
Mayor Hardy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and we're going to open up for public comment again. Here's your second chance, or third chance.
Oh, yes.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? None of this process has been easy, and I think symbolically having to rescind the vote and vote on again is probably, par for the course. But I want to thank again Mr. Prince for all the work he did, and for our city attorney catching all the stuff that she did that needed to be clarified, and to all of you for all the hard work you did, all the great questions you had. So we're very, very hopeful that we can move forward in the future with new regulatory authority if the state gives it to us. So thank you very much.
Great. Okay, any other members of the public? Okay, we're going to close the public hearing, and I'll take a new motion.
I move to adopt TO 25-22.
Second.
Mr. Snyder on the second. You call roll again, please.
Mr. Egan?
Yes.
Ms. Connolly?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes?
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
Mayor Hardy?
Yes.
Thank you, council.
Thank you, Mr. Prince, again. It's because the agenda was moving along so quickly that we had to do it twice. Okay, let's call the next item.
TR 26-11 is a resolution to initiate amendments to the South Washington Street Small Area Plan and Downtown Small Area Plan related to recommendations for redevelopment of Virginia Village and to amend the City of Falls Church Comprehensive Plan to update Chapter 4, Land Use and Economic Development, to incorporate both small area plans.
Thank you. I know we also had very thorough discussion about Virginia Village in our joint work session last week, so thank you for coming back again, Mr. Trainer.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I have largely the same presentation as last week, but with a couple key small updates, so I'm just going to revisit it real quickly. Again, the request tonight is adoption of an initiating resolution to address and consider possible amendments to the South Washington Street and Downtown Small Area Plan. And then also the new part is to also include these two small area plans into the comprehensive plan. Okay, so as a reminder, small area plans reflect comprehensive plan guidance and go into more detail about how to implement that guidance. They are heavily community vetted visions for their respective area of the city, which are called planning opportunity areas. And this map that is also new, a new feature to the presentation, shows kind of an updated look at where all those planning opportunity areas lie in the city, which are primarily along our commercial corridors. Some of the identified reasons for updating the small area plan is one, to reconcile the guidance in those two small area plans with the overhead guidance already included in the comprehensive plan's land use chapter, and also to reflect the more recent city policies, such as the Virginia Village Property Acquisition Strike Fund, and then also to dust off those recommendations and confirm that those are still the community's vision for the future of the Virginia Village area, to include in a RFP process that staff is proposing to initiate in the spring of this year. And those would include, to be clear, just the properties that the city owns. This is a zoom in on the kind of current conditions in terms of the small area plan boundaries of Virginia Village, which is outlined in yellow. The South Washington Street small area plan boundaries are in that kind of beige color that's labeled number 2. And the downtown small area plan is in the blue area, which includes just a sliver of the Virginia Village area. But so some of the considerations that could be revisited and reconfirmed with the community include future land uses for the Virginia Village area, buffering and screening of any redevelopment that might occur there with the surrounding area and context, and that would also include building design, including height, density, and step backs. So the key stakeholder outreach obviously includes the residents that live there today. Staff held a meeting with some of the residents on February 24th to describe this process to them, make them aware that this was happening ahead of any council action. We'll be specifically also reaching out to all 3 subgroups of the Winter Hill community, and then also the Tinner Hill Heritage Foundation, and then obviously residents across the city as well. And what that looked like, what staff's proposing is a three-part process. The first would kick off in just a couple weeks later this month, following any council action tonight to initiate this process. That would include a visioning process where we'd have community meetings included during one weeknight and one weekend, where we would invite the community to come and share their vision for the community. We'd revisit the guidance that's currently in the small area plans and start identifying any areas for potential amendments. Following that process, in April, we'd come back to the community with 2 more meetings following the same structure, one weeknight meeting, one weekend meeting with some draft amendments and get further feedback on those. And then the board and commission consideration and feedback process would start later in April, and we've budgeted that to happen into June, with right now looking like a second reading from council potentially happening in June of this year. And here's another kind of visual representation of that process, with the RFP process initiating in May right now, allowing for a 2-month period for submissions, and then a selection process would happen for another 2 months beginning in July and August. So lastly, next steps following potential action tonight, staff would start planning and advertising those meetings that would happen later this month and into April. Staff would also start exploring the procurement process for a commercial real estate advisory service that would help with that RFP development and selection process. And then a little further down the road, staff also recommends that City Council appoint a selection committee to also weigh in on that process, the RFP process. And so that concludes my presentation. I'll end it there for any questions or discussion. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Trainer. Questions or comments? Mr. Snyder.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So what if in these community meetings, the community says, we don't want to go the RFP process, or we have a different idea of mix of uses? There seems to be a little bit of a jarring inconsistency. We're asking the community to input, to give us their guidance, their suggestions, and yet we seem to be moving on a course that's predetermined. So could you explain to me how we're going to coordinate? It's not just coordination, it's if someone is attending these meetings, I think they're going to assume that all ideas are welcome, and that one proposal is apparently the documents that have been presented will be available to them. But are they restricted as to what they can comment on or what their vision is for that area?
Sure. So a lot of this is building off of previous guidance, right? That's already in the small area plans. The small area plans make a lot of future land use recommendations. That includes an affordable housing component, new affordable housing. And the comp plan also is not as descriptive about it, but talks about future land uses being a multitude of different housing typologies. And so starting sort of with that guidance and then also applying the more kind of recent posture that the city's taken to acquire these properties from and make sure that they come under, city ownership and saving them from, the private market where, current residents could be kicked out just because, their owner, the building owner, sold to a private developer who, could by right put something up that's a market product, right? So sort of taking all of that into consideration, affordable housing is in a lot of ways already sort of in the plans. And so what we'll be describing is, okay, so taking what's already in the plans, this is, the guidance for kind of the whole site, and how can we include as many kind of positive community-backed outcomes here as possible?
Right. I know that's probably what you would like to come out of the discussion, but what if the community says, we really don't like this? I guess the big thing is I want to make sure that there's maximum freedom for the community, if you will, and that we may be presenting materials, but they have the right to make comments that may be very favorable, may suggest modifications, or may suggest going in a different direction, and that all of that would be considered seriously moving forward. Am I hearing that's what you're saying, or am I hearing something else?
Well, so this scope would just be considering the small area plan amendment process. And so this process alone wouldn't itself initiate any redevelopment or in the RFP process. That'd be a separate action. So if there is, substantial disagreement on that concept, I think that'd be something that would be addressed, as part of the amendment process in a separate action.
Okay, so this isn't we're going to do this and we're explaining it to you, but rather here is something that we're thinking about, that we've talked about. We invite your views on that, positive, negative, modifications, whatever. Is that what I'm hearing that the community meetings will be?
Yeah, so it'll be explaining, what the current guidance is that's in the plans that have been adopted. Here's where we're at, right? And here's where we could go, right, based on policies that have happened. But again, getting feedback on all of that. So there's no, we're going to be, again, getting feedback on all of that. So this any other action is not precluded in this.
Jump to that slide that talked about like components, it called out like height and density, like community uses previous to this.
Yeah,
One. Not that one, this one.
Yeah.
I guess if I can jump in, Mr. Snyder, I don't think there is a this yet for the community to comment on. What they're commenting on is the small area plan that was adopted, two that we adopted over 13 years ago. Should it be refreshed in light of the new acquisitions we made at Virginia Village, in light of the affordable living policy plans? And if so, along these lines, what are the things that people want to comment on? And then this will then be used to inform the RFP that will be under development. So we don't actually have a proposal in front of the community that's like, here's a project. We don't even have a project yet. I think this guides the RFP process. Developers may respond to that and propose projects, but that's down the road. That's several months down the road. That's how I read it. Is that?
That's accurate. Yeah.
There is no this, I guess, to discuss at this point.
Okay.
So would it be okay if thank you very much, Mr. Trainer, for this. Two things. One is if we could, if you all could make sure to notify the council of when those community meetings are, because I know many of us would like to attend the community meetings to hear firsthand, feedback. And then I don't know if this is a question for the mayor or for Mr. Shields, but in terms of the city council coming up with a selection committee, how do would that just be something that we would give our feedback to the mayor? And I'm just like logistically, how do we do that?
Well, the West Falls Selection Committee was an appointment. There was a sort of a chartered group with the Sunset that was given a set of tasks to perform, and that included being on the selection committee for an ultimate partner for West Falls. So I think council can talk about how detailed you want to be, but I'm envisioning this being a chartered group established by and appointed by the city council.
But I guess that's my question. Like, how do we, when you say established by the city council, maybe this is a GovOps conversation, I'm not sure, but I'm sure we all have different ideas of who should be on this committee. So is that just something that the mayor will sort of?
No, that's, the
she can kind of organize that process. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, in writing it, that allows this discussion to be had. And so the council can say, okay, well, what's the right number of people? Okay. Is 9 too many, 5 too few? What's the right number for a good group?
Yeah.
And who do you want to be on this group? and what's their scope of work?
I recall with West Falls, we kind of named bodies we want represented. Like we wanted one member of the Planning Commission, we wanted one city council member, one EDA member, one school person, and then we let those bodies kind of come up with recommendations that we then all collectively voted on. I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Yeah.
So
Okay, so we'll just,
Yeah.
we can
give
just,
by a vote of the full council.
okay, and we can just figure that out. Okay.
That's a decision point, whether the council would say, Planning Commission, you pick your one designee to be on the selection committee, or the council could say, send us your name, but we're going to make the final appointment. That's a decision point that you could make, when you're establishing it, how you'd want to handle those appointments.
Okay, thank you. Because, for me personally, we're not going to get into this right now, but, it's probably, I think, worth it to have the homeowners association president from Winter Hill, be involved, whether it's just part of the process or different part of the process. So, but housing commission and all that. So we can figure that out later. But I was just curious on how logistically we get that together. So thank you very much. But yeah, Mr. Train, I'd love to know when you have those meetings set up, just let us know. Thank you so much.
We'll sure do that. Thank you.
Ms. Flynn?
I had a similar question to Ms. Downs. I guess I'll just say yes, I would be in favor of a work session as to what the selection committee looks like, who the bodies sort of like are on the selection committee, and then might even favor some use of appointments committee in terms of like potentially choosing people depending on if there's like interest among the commission or sort of seating the people, who knows. But I guess my question was going to go more to, a public RFP process and what the public can actually expect out of an RFP process. And so that's why I would like the selection committee process to be more visible, because, an RFP goes out and you can see the contents of the RFP, but then the public often isn't privy to the actual RFP submissions, right? Like those are generally only seen by the selection committee. And so I think to the extent we can have transparency and visibility into the process at different points, knowing that the public won't necessarily have the same degree of visibility into other aspects of the process, is just helpful from a procedural standpoint going into this.
Mr. Reagan?
Just one quick thing on the selection committee. I agree. We will need to. I think we should have community representation on there additionally. But what I wanted to jump onto, and thank you, I've heard this many times now, an area of confusion I think we get, and it's on the previous slide, I think can show it, where we have the small area plan process, and the small area plan process is looking at the entirety of Virginia Village and the surrounding area. It's really looking at the Virginia Village area of that small area plan. It's not really looking at the rest of it. And that's the top part above the dates. If you go to the previous slide with the calendar, there you go. And that's if I understand this correctly, the top part is talking about the entirety of the Virginia Village property, the small area plan, the strategy we want to embrace, and really what you're asking us to do right now is to initiate the top part. And then the bottom part is specific to the properties that the city owns. So it's actually a subset, and the bottom part is the development. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's the piece that people mix up, and I think has caused confusion.
Which is the top and bottom parts?
So the blue above the dates, and that's
the arrows.
That's the small area plan, the strategy of what we want there. And then the bottom part is really the RFP and specific to our properties, the things that
correct.
we own.
Yeah, so
I think that's important to differentiate and maybe communicate, because we mix them together. And I think it gets confusing, and the stuff on the top feeds into the RFP. The things that are coming out of the blue feeds down into the RFP. It's not going the other way. The RFP is not feeding the strategy. The strategy is feeding the RFP.
Right. So, yeah, we'd be looking at the plans for the whole area, but obviously the RFP, the city only controls what it controls, right? So the RFP process will only involve those city properties. And so it will be, an important distinction to make when we're going through this community engagement process to highlight that ownership and be like, these are the properties the city owns. These are, what could be included in an RFP more immediately. And then in the future, these are all the properties that the city doesn't own. But, if there is an opportunity down the road, what is the community vision for those areas?
I think we just need to work a little bit on the communication. I think part of it is that people are used to government where the old way of doing it would have been we do the 2 blue ones and then we start the green ones, but we're not doing that. We're running them in parallel, which is great and is a much better way to do it, in my opinion. And but it does throw it off. That's my only comment. Is I think we just need to maybe look at the communication of it.
Noted. Thank you.
Ms. Flanagan?
I just had one follow-up, and I think that here the community concern is that because of the timeline, that the RFP is actually going to drive what comes out of the community conversations, right? So the thing that you said, like the blue line, right, is supposed to at some point inform the green piece, but the green piece isn't supposed to get so far ahead of the blue that it actually loses what the community vision is, even for those parcels that the city owns, because the city doesn't own those parcels without the community's commitment to the development, right? Like it's not like we own them independent of the community in which we sit and the financial sort of contributions that the community is going to be making to the parcels over time. And so I think that the reason that people have been, or that there's been some pushback in different places or concern in different places, is because people want to make sure that because the timelines are as aggressive as they are on the RFP issuance, that it does have time for the blue to inform the green before the green is so far along that we're backfilling the blue to ensure that the comp plans meet whatever the developer is going to need for the,
Yeah.
entitlements and permissions, right? And so that's like the tension in this, and I just want to acknowledge that it's not as clean as one way or the other, and that's some of the concerns and some of the things that I think, the planning director talked about is the acknowledging the elephant in the room in terms of trying to do this on a fast scale, recognizing that an RFP, as the mayor said, it takes years before you are actually having
And Mr. Matusik said, 80% of an RFP is really how do you respond? What's the paperwork? Administrative stuff that can be done. And
I thought he said like
waiting for that
95%.
community. Yeah, waiting for that community piece.
But wasn't there also, if I'm remembering this right, if there was something that came out of the meetings that was very important, or yes, we could still update that RFP, right? Or I thought there was some sort of, I don't know what the terminology was, but that we could go and notify people that this has been updated with maybe a new, whatever.
Yeah, and that's, they're acknowledging that there's overlap between these two processes, but so both would be interspersed with community meetings, right? And meetings that require action, not just from this body, but from Planning Commission recommendations from other groups. And so there will be, critical goals to hit along the way within each of these scopes. And so starting, so aggressive just kind of just gives us that momentum to keep going versus something that could be really long could take inadvertently longer than perhaps it might need to. So starting with this sort of aggressive schedule, again, just kind of sets, I think, that momentum, but by no means is, allows for some flexibility, I think, with those other meetings that, again, need to happen in there. And to the addendum part, that's what would go into the RFP. Any additional information that needs to be added certainly can after its issuance. And if need be, perhaps that the window could even be extended, if it needs to.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, I think what made me feel better is when Mr. Matusik last week said 95% of the RFP is kind of boilerplate. and that the 5% would be reserved so that when the community input and the board and commission review completed, that could be slotted in. So that made me feel better that one is driving the other, not the other way around. Okay. Other questions or comments? Okay. I know we don't need a public hearing for this, but for posterity's sake, let's do one anyway. Any members of the public wish to comment on this one? Maybe it makes up for not having the public hearing earlier. Okay, we're going to close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I move to adopt TR 2611.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Downs on the second. Can you call roll, please?
Mr. Egan?
Yes.
Ms. Connolly?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes?
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
Mayor Hardy?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
We look forward to the next steps. Okay, third item is our council priorities. Thank you, Mr. Shields, for incorporating comments from last discussion, and looks like we have close to final copy in front of us.
So I did want to just note that there is a revised draft that's at the dais with the council and was also made available to the public. And so the gray highlights represents language changes from the work session last week, and the yellow highlights represents comments received over the weekend. And I want to thank Councilmember Egan for comments, and hopefully we captured them all. We'd be happy to. I won't give a detailed staff report because the council has discussed this several times at work session.
There is still the typo at lines 167, 168. There's two. One of the public needs to be removed. There's
That's
two
right.
the publics in there.
So that second, the public, should be crossed out. My apologies.
Could I make one other suggestion? This is on me for not submitting this in writing. It was only when I looked at the highlighted version that it stood out to me. And it's, in my mind, a relatively simple fix just to make sure this is in kind of more parallel structure throughout. At 166 to 169, could we just simplify that paragraph and say public engagement, engage broadly and deeply with the community whenever important policies are being considered, keep the public informed on issues before the council, and meet the public where they are to ensure that all are heard. And then it makes it consistent with the rest of the document. I can provide that to Ms. Prince if it's easier. I have the paper copy here, if people are inclined to agree.
People okay with that? Yep, thank you. Any other comments? I think as we talked about work session, I look forward to this version kind of prettified and just like a digestible, like one-pager ideally, so we could say, here's the top 5, buckets of work that we're focused on, or maybe a 5-page deck or something, because I think it'd be important for the public to know that, here's things that we've said collectively are important for us for the next 2 years.
Okay.
So thank you in advance for staff for helping with that.
Madam Mayor? I only had one question on line 201 and 202. We've just had a discussion of Virginia Village, and I'm not sure this language is consistent with that. I just asked the question. The second paragraph under Virginia Village, take policy actions that will encourage community partners to preserve, okay. How about, and potentially build new committed affordable housing in Virginia Village? Because it sounds like, again, a predetermined outcome. And I thought we just had a discussion that we are open. I mean, this may be the direction that some folks want to take, but it just seemed to me it went too far in this particular document.
Thoughts from others?
I'm okay if we want to say something on 202, like and build, comma, as appropriate, comma, new, committed affordable housing in Virginia Village. If that resolves your concern.
Ms. Underhill?
Could you repeat that? Sorry.
Again, if we were to say, I think, yeah, it's similar to what Mr. Snyder said. I think he was saying on 202 to say and potentially build new committed affordable housing, or we could say and build as appropriate new committed affordable housing in Virginia Village.
So basically add the words build as, or as appropriate. Fine with me.
I mean, it's fine. I would just call out that, at 193, we are committing to increasing housing affordability or access to affordable housing. And so we need a strategy to do so. And unless we say that, we didn't spend millions of dollars buying up units at Virginia Village just to keep them as is forever. We were very explicit that we were going to do more, especially given the affordable living policy goals we all collectively adopted last year. So I would just challenge us to, while we haven't committed to anything in terms of how many, how big, what AMI levels, what the mix of uses are, that I do think we've sent a pretty strong signal in both the acquisition of the properties as well as the strike fund that we have funded with some local dollars and some grants, that we are trying to do something bold for affordable housing in the community.
I'm perfectly fine leaving it as is. I think the language feels fine to me.
Yeah, I would agree, because I think, to me, Mr. Schneider, it says, I would agree if it just said, take policy actions that will encourage community partners to build, but it does say to preserve. So I think that sort of makes it broad enough that, if we have community feedback that maybe, I don't know, there's community members that don't want that sort of building to happen. I think it covers us both ways, preserving and building. So I'd be okay to leave it as is.
Thoughts?
So I wanted to step back to 193 and 190. I think you, obviously I prefer 193, but I believe you put it in this as an alternative. And so I guess the question is, council, which do we prefer? I think the intent was one or the other, if I'm correct. Was that the intent, is that we would choose between 190 and 193?
Yeah, I thought that it was just easier for the council to read the two sentences side by side and then choose the one they preferred.
So, which do we prefer? I obviously prefer 193 because I wrote it.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I just don't want it to be used later to say we committed to something that we didn't actually commit to. And so I think so long as we're not saying, well, the council decided in X to do this a year from now with respect to something that isn't on this page, then with that shared understanding, I'm fine with with the alternative language.
So going back to lines 201 to 202, I think I heard Ms. Underhill, Ms. Downs say it's fine as is. Any other comments? Mr. Snyder had.
The only comment I have is we could say preserve and/or build new committed affordable housing. That might cover everything, the whole waterfront.
Thoughts on that?
But then that sort of, I guess, backs away from everything that we've been doing with Virginia Village so far.
Well, it does, but it also leaves the opening that there may be some that we never own. So that would be the or, like if they're still there. I don't know. I would be okay to leave it just as is. I just propose that as a compromise.
I like that compromise.
Okay.
So, and or?
Yeah. Sounds fine.
And then I had a question, Madam Mayor, on line 210 to 212. So could we review again what this new state authority is? And it's granted to the city to evaluate and ultimately set. So we're evaluating whether to use this new state authority. So what is that state authority we're talking about?
I believe this is the one that we requested last session that we got granted, correct?
That's correct. It's an amendment to 15.2-2304, which is embedded in my mind, but it gives you all more flexibility and authority to decide how you want to do your ADUs in terms of density and ratio to ADU, where right now you're in the code section 2305 that's very constrained. So it's authority the General Assembly has now granted, and so the process would be to develop the ordinance as you want to have that structured within the City of Falls Church.
So we can determine whether we use the state authority, and if so, how?
Correct.
Is that right? Is that implied? Okay. I don't need to change the wording then.
Although, actually, can we spell out ADU just to avoid confusion with accessory dwelling units?
Yeah, this is the Affordable Dwelling Unit Ordinance, not accessory dwelling. Couldn't get the state to rename them.
And it's looking like the entire state's going to get the same authority, correct?
It's looking like it's coming out. Right now, the authority for the City of Falls Church fills out the donut hole in Northern Virginia.
It's really hard to hear that mic. I don't know whether it's on or... Okay, anything else? Okay, is there a motion to adopt?
So does the motion need to say with?
It sounds like we've agreed on the alternative 193. There was a edit on line 168 to remove the second public as well as Aaron's edits from 166 to 167. Were there other changes?
So I'll move to adopt TR 26-10. Oops. Did you hear me? Okay, I'll move to adopt TR 26-10 as amended with discussion of council.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Downs on the second. And call roll, please.
Mr. Egan?
Yes.
Ms. Connolly?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes?
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
And Mayor Hardy?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. We have nothing on consent? Yes.
Can I just say thanks to the staff for helping us through this process?
Finish early March, which I think is a nice goal to have. We can get to schedule at the end, but do we want to do any other committee reports first or comments? People have standing regional committee or liaison reports. Councilmember comments? I know we want to talk about potentially other business, like a legislative update. Do we want to do that and then we can get to schedule? Okay. Ms. Mester?
All right.
Thank you, deputies. Have a good night.
Ready, Mayor, for the legislative item you wanted to raise?
Yes, well, one, I guess as an opening, I know that they're nearing the end of session, end of this week. Is there anything that we should know about, or is the Ledge Committee engaged or meeting this week?
Yeah, they are scheduled to adjourn this upcoming Saturday. There are 50 bills still in conference or committee that haven't been negotiated out, so we're still waiting to see the outcome of those. Transportation funding, collective bargaining and transportation funding would be the top ones we've been focusing on there. And then there's still been no announced budget agreement. The committee conferees are still working on that, so lots to happen this week. The budget, if it's going to be adopted by their deadline of adjourning, would have to be announced on Thursday, so it's going to be a tight window. For the budget, I think it's 50-50. We may have a continuation of the session and still be working on the budget for a bit. So that's a quick update on that. Mayor had sent out an email earlier this afternoon about possibly co-signing a letter at the request of the city of Alexandria regarding the skill games bills that are in Richmond, which is House Bill 1272 and Senate Bill 661. They are very different bills. They're also in conference, and so there's a lot of negotiations still to go on those. The request from Alexandria would be to sign on to a letter requesting that if the bill makes it out, that you have to opt in and the locality can have a referendum to opt in, which is the House version. The Senate version, you would automatically have skill games and you'd have to do a referendum to opt out. So that's the core thing of the Alexandria letter. There are some pieces where they speak to some of the limits are different, some of the controls, the separation and distance from schools is better in the House bill than the Senate bill, some of those type of things. The revenue that comes from this is a split of state and local, so there is some local revenues associated with this, with also the desire to have some guardrails around the safety.
Okay.
So since this isn't specifically called out in your legislative program, it is not inconsistent with the basic local authority, retain that locally position. And you all were meeting tonight, it seemed timely to have consensus whether you wanted to sign on to that letter.
And you all in your inboxes should have a draft of that letter that originated from Alexandria, so if you all have opinions.
So, for the public's benefit, probably my own, what are skills games?
That's like if you go into gas stations or 7-Elevens or some of the bars and you can play a gaming video game,
Like slot
cards,
machine
gambling.
type games inside. They were legalized briefly during COVID to help with some of those small businesses. And so they were legal for a little bit, and then I think the period ended, and so there was an attempt to bring
Ended
them
with
back.
COVID and the administrative change.
So is there gambling connected with these games, or it's just you?
It is gambling.
Yeah,
There are some theoretic consumer protections. So on the House bill, they would only pay at 84%. There's some tax rates on there. The House bill limits only 15,000 machines throughout the state. Senate has 35,000, so there are some limits. Some of the concerns is for people with addictions and what kind of support if that happened. And so the Alexandria letter also flags that as an issue, and that's where the ability to have local control and decision is preferred and recommended, that you could opt in to have the referendum. And that also allows you to decide where you want to put them and how many.
So just one further question, is Alexandria supporting the opt-in or the opt-out?
Opt-in.
Okay.
So it's not, the state's not automatically
Do it
authorizing.
unless the city council were,
Yeah.
Authorize referendum, and then the community would get to vote, and then you get to opt
I
into it.
personally think that's fine if we're going to have to deal with the issue.
So earlier in the session, I know some of the bills included language around increasing the gambling commission at the state level or establishing one. I forget exactly the details. Where do those stand, and would the skill games fall underneath that commission?
I would have to check and see if the commission is progressing through, but this would fall in, the lottery would fall in, the casino, if it happened, would all fall under that. But I'd have to check on that specific bill. And I just found on my notes from Alexandria, for some of the consumer safeguards, the House bill limits the payout to be $500. The Senate bill removes has $4,000, so you could get a big payout at one time. This is not one bill that's been in your legislative program, so I'm following along with Alexandria's research.
Guess I'm hearing general support to sign on to the Alexandria bill. Okay. And the other one, which I don't have a draft of was Vienna reached out asking us to join in on their letter to oppose the casino legislation, which actually already passed. And I think it's just asking the governor to not sign it, to veto it. And that's strictly for Fairfax County. And I think, as I understand, it would still require the Board of Supervisors to authorize a referendum. Several members of the board have said that they don't actually want to proceed with that. And I mean, even after they authorized, they have a majority vote. Voters would have to vote for it before it would be allowed. And it's no longer limited to Tysons. It could be anywhere in Fairfax County.
So my only, and I communicated this with the mayor earlier today, but my only thought, and this is just me, but the Alexandria version is pretty general. It's general. And then what Vienna is asking us to sign is this very specific matter that Fairfax is dealing with. So I'm more apprehensive to join in with Vienna and, injecting ourselves into another jurisdiction's business. But that's just my thought. The Alexandria one is very general and can be applied in multiple situations.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I tend to stay out of other people's business.
Madam Mayor, I do have a question. Could we reach out to Fairfax County Board of Supervisors to determine whether they want us at this point to weigh in? It's interesting that Vienna wants that, but I'm interested in whether the Fairfax County Board would like us to weigh in or not. They may not, or they may, and if they may, then I'd suggest we bring this back to the City Council.
I mean, Vienna's located as a town within the county, which is probably why they've been more opinionated about this, as opposed to a fully independent jurisdiction like we are.
I mean, we're right, they are, but the action would be to put it anywhere in Fairfax County, right? And we have intel that the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors really doesn't like this. And I think if they would like us to be supportive of their position, I think we ought to seriously consider it. In my own view, but it's whatever the consensus is.
Other opinions?
While Tysons is very close to us, I was less concerned, but now if I hear it could be anywhere in Fairfax County, there's a lot of Falls Church that touches Fairfax County, that puts it right closer in our backyard. Tysons is pretty close anyway, so I would not be opposed to, if we are working with our partners, Vienna and Fairfax County Board, to saying Falls Church agrees with this, or disagrees, whatever. Falls Church sides with our neighbors.
I would support that position.
That's two. Anybody else?
I was fine deferring, but, I mean, I'm happy to support the position if, as you're saying, right? I mean, it basically could sit on our border.
I mean, the bill has specific, site requirements and how big it would have to be, how much, square footage, and how much housing it would have, and you'd be in transit, so there's nothing nearby, in my opinion, that would actually fit those site characteristics, but.
I think my understanding is the other sites that people are talking about now beyond Tysons are down near the bridge in the Greater Alexandria, so south of Alexandria. And I don't like the idea of it being just off of our borders too. But I don't know. This is getting into the politics of who do you support, who do you set. There's a lot of different groups involved on this. So I'm not sure that.
Okay, I heard 3 as being open to the idea of joining the Vienna letter.
My preference is to stay out of it.
I'd like to stay out of it. Downs, I think, was out. Mr. Reagan was undecided, so we're split 3-3.
Then I'd say let's stay out.
Okay. Thank you for that
All right,
discussion. I know that we also were talking about doing a letter on transit funding. At this point, do we think that matters or helps or doesn't help?
I'll be in Richmond tomorrow, so I'll have a better chance to confirm that with what's happening, informally, and then whether it goes to the conferees again or to the administration. So since that's in council's position, once I know the outcome, then I'll follow up on the letter.
And I know it's tricky because originally we thought about NVRC doing a letter, but given that The Senate version impacts NVTA funding, and VTC has different opinions. If we want to do a letter among Arlington, Alexandria, and Falls Church, I think people are game for that, especially if we really strongly prefer one version, or we think we have a hybrid third version that would
Yeah, the
address it.
hybrid version would eliminate the negative impact on NVTA. I will be with the executive director of NVTC all day tomorrow, so we can get that feel, but I know Alexandria and Alexandria is still willing to co-sign a letter jointly with the city.
I agree. I think we should consider co-signing a letter, but we're not exactly sure at this point what it would say, right? Until we get more firm language. Is that sort of where we are?
We have some options that are floating, and so we're trying to get the reaction from the conferees and the patrons. And if it's favorable, we won't need the letter, or we'll need the letter to reinforce. So we need to allow some of the dialogue to continue for 2 days, no longer.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else coming out of the state?
That's the key ones. I gave you the email earlier about the housing bills. So a lot of that has changed. We have some pending requests in for the faith in housing, but haven't heard if the patron accepted them yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you in advance for being in Richmond. Okay. Anything else before we get to minutes and then schedule? Okay, who's read the February 23rd minutes and has any comments? Anyone have a motion to approve minutes?
I move to approve the minutes of February 9th.
Is there a second? Was it Connolly in the second?
I don't think that's the right date.
February 23rd, yes.
Sorry, I move to approve the minutes of February 23rd, although I would change the date at the very top.
At the top, it still says February 9th.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's Downs on the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Okay, we can move to schedule. We cancel Wednesday because it's only 9:15. Can we pull that up, please? I assume people wanted you scheduled. Yeah. Okay. Wyatt, is your mic on?
It is now, thank you. So, March 16th work session, we'll have the feedback on names for the park at the Fellows property. We'll have a briefing on the permit process improvements and permit fee changes. We'll have our after-action report for snow response. And one potential item, just from tonight's discussion, if we're able to get it to you, we could have sort of a rough draft of a charter for the selection committee, so you could discuss what that would look like, because it is a two-step process. First, you would establish the committee, and then you would make appointments to it. So we could get that conversation started on the 16th. On March 23rd, Child Abuse Prevention Month proclamation, Fair Housing Month proclamation, annual report from the Arts and Humanities Council, and then the budget presentations by the city manager and the school board, and then action on the Fellows property naming, action on the memorandum of agreement with the EDA on the Virginia Village properties, and the charter for a selection committee.
Wyatt, going back to March 16th, I think in the previous version, I was kind of looking forward to the bus stops improvements project briefing. Did that get bumped somewhere?
Yeah, let me check in with Amanda on that.
Could I also ask for March? I don't know if it fell off or if it will be captured somewhere else or in a memo potentially, but can we have a follow-up on preservation of units and any additional information we requested?
So we could do that in the context of the housing, the human services budget, when that comes to council, and I haven't actually plugged that in on the budget work sessions, but we could do that. That April 6th work session is pretty loaded, and so I think adding housing to that agenda would be a bit much. On the other hand, the CIP is a time where we consider sort of capital funding or long-term funding for affordable housing alongside the CIP. So actually, that could be a good time to talk about funding for preservation.
More than anything, I want to make sure that it doesn't get lost and that we slot it in somewhere.
Yeah. Sorry for that kind of rambling response, but that...
No, that's fine. And I mean, in some of the shorter sessions, I mean, maybe it would be a closed session at the end of a work session as opposed to an end of that really long work session, if it fit it in March somewhere, but.
Right. Okay. So after the budget, we would have the first of 2 town hall meetings on the budget, the first one on Thursday at noon, and then we would get back together on April 6th for work session. We would first meet for the Pinwheel Garden ceremony at 7 p.m., then come in for work session, focus all on budget, CIP, so the 6-year capital plan along with the 6-year housing, affordable housing funding plan, a discussion of the DPW budget, discussion of planning, economic development, and code administration budget, along with a review of all the tax and fee ordinances, and that would include the building permit fees. Then looking ahead to the 13th, proclamation on National Library Week, Arbor Day, National Public Safety Telecommunications Week. Be joined by the AAB for its annual report. And then first reading on the budget ordinance and the tax and fee ordinances. In terms of adding to that, as I think that would be potentially a relatively short meeting, we could then have a deeper dive on a budget topic, and I think that housing potentially would be one of those strategic areas because we could do a little bit more of a discussion about that night. Looking ahead to the other budget work sessions, we have the Budget and Finance Committee on the 17th. We'll get third quarter financial results that night. And then on April 20th, the school budget, the public safety budget, and feedback from Virginia Village Community Engagement. GovOps Committee on April 22nd. And then April 27th, we would have a 6:30 reception for Employee of the Year. We're going to announce that this week, so we're excited about that. Employee of the Year recognition at the meeting, proclamation on public service recognition, Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, Jewish American Heritage Month, and the Retirement Board annual report. There would be an advertised public hearing on the budget ordinance and the tax and fee items, and then we would end that meeting with a budget work session. Then on May 4th, that's the last budget work session on the budget, or last work session on the budget, final markup. And we also have some updates on the Chesapeake Bay state law compliance. then on May 11th is final action on the budget. We do have these initiating resolutions on comp plan chapters, and so I'll have more information on those. A lot of those are, the environment one is fairly technical in nature. The subdivision and site plans, however, relates to the discussions we've had in the past about updating our processes in light of the state code provisions relating to granting of waivers through the site plan process. And have those instead go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So maybe that's far enough for us to get through tonight, and but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I had sent an email about April 1st, both the mayor's meeting as well as our office hours. I think I only heard affirmatively from Art that he'll be here. I think a handful of us were actually out.
Yeah, Mary Beth and I
I'm
think
out.
you are out, so that's 3. Aaron, are you in?
I don't know. I responded to the city clerk to say that I was hoping we'd determine our plans over the weekend. And they're not settled yet, so I guess I'm up in the air right now. But am I the determinative factor for quorum?
I'm not 100% sure I'd be there. You shouldn't count on me.
I mean, it seems like we should just cancel.
Yeah, I think so. Art, do you feel comfortable doing Ask the Council, even if it's you by yourself? I said we could title it Ask Art.
Come in wearing a t-shirt that I get yelled with bullseye.
Rebranding.
Because that we don't need like a quorum for.
Yeah, I mean, I can do it if you want to do that.
Thank you.
I think people ought to know that there'd only be one person there.
That's okay.
Yeah, we never promise that you get all of city council. Sometimes you get all, sometimes you get 3, sometimes you get 4. So, and I know GovOps is going to take on a process to have things in the community as well, so. Okay, sounds like we're canceling the schedule part of it, and then Art and maybe whoever else wants to join them will be there for office hours at 9. Okay.
I just want to put out there, make sure that Ms. Flynn and Ms. Hardy know there is no appointments committee meeting this week. We have no one to interview.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, just a quick question. Looking at May 11 and then May 18, no, actually, May 4 and May 11, the subdivisions and site plans. Now, that's just the initiating resolution? That's
That's
not
right.
approval of the resolution, is that right?
That would be just to kick off the code review.
Okay. I think that's important for the community to know. Thank you.
Anything else? Are there other dates that people are out?
Well, isn't there GovOps on March 25th? Or is that canceled because there's no meeting after it?
I think we were still planning on GovOps on the 25th.
Yeah, I noticed, I meant to follow up that for some reason I had seen that it had fallen off. I'm not sure why, but I'll go back and check the schedule that Ms. Carroll had given us.
I'm likely absent for the June 8th meeting. I'll see whether I might be able to join at the very beginning if it turns out that, are we going to have, do you think, a work session on appointing members to the selection committee? Probably, right? Yeah, before, I mean, that's an action meeting.
On June 8th?
Yeah. Sorry. Anyway, you can just note for now that I'm likely absent on the 8th.
Thought I saw it earlier. Is it June 2nd has the work session?
It looks like that's on May 18th.
Just a quick note, so I'm probably going to be remote for all of May. I don't know. But just something to note.
And beyond.
I will be remote for all of May.
Or absent. Or absent would be fine too.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. If there's nothing else,
Quick question. Is there any update on whether or not there was a meeting with the Broad Falls community that happened yet? For the bike?
Falls Plaza.
Oh, excuse me, Falls Plaza.
Oh, I apologize. I need to get back with council on that. I don't think it has happened, but there should be a date, so I'll get that date.
Okay, that would be
I'll
great.
share that.
Thank you.
okay. If there's nothing else, I think we're adjourned. Good night, all. Enjoy the early night.